Welcome back to Reddit Family Secrets. Kindly support my channel, subscribe, like and comment. Your support means the world to me. Today's story is one that genuinely shook me to my core when I read it. Let's get into it. My husband, Brandon, had a talent for dropping life-altering confessions like he was reading off a grocery list. No dramatic pause, no softening of the blow, just words falling out of his mouth, and me sitting there trying to figure out how a sentence that started so normally could end so catastrophically. We were at the kitchen table in our Scottsdale, Arizona home, the one I'd put the down payment on with my bonus from the accounting firm where I'd just made senior partner. Brandon had been home since noon. I'd gotten home at 7:30 after back-to-back client meetings, changed out of my blazer, and still managed to put a full dinner on the table. He was on his phone when I sat down. So, he said, still scrolling, my 5U college reunion is in 3 weeks. I need Jade to come with me. I set my fork down slowly. Jade was my best friend since middle school. She was also currently living in my guest room, rent-free, while she figured out her next chapter. I was paying her car note, her gym membership, her streaming subscriptions. I'd even covered her dental work in January because she said she couldn't afford it. Why? I said carefully. Would Jade be coming to your reunion? Brandon finally looked up. Because I told my college friends I was dating her back when we first met. They saw her at that 4th of July party at Corey's place and assumed she was my girlfriend. I just never corrected it. I waited for the punchline, for anything that would make this make sense. It never came. You told your college friends you were with my best friend, I repeated. It's not a huge deal, Mara. It was easier at the time. And honestly, you know how those guys are. Jade made an impression. I can't show up after 5 years with someone they don't recognize. Someone they don't recognize. I had a master's degree in accounting. I managed a client portfolio worth $40 million. I had paid every single bill in this house for 2 years while Brandon floated between real estate ventures that never seemed to close. And I was someone they don't recognize. So what's the plan? I asked, my voice calm in the way it gets right before it stops being calm. Just one night. Jade already said yes. She thinks it sounds fun. He squeezed my hand. I'll take you somewhere nice after. Whatever restaurant you want. Jade already said yes. She hadn't called me. Hadn't texted me. My best friend, sleeping under my roof, had agreed to pretend to be my husband's girlfriend at a college reunion and didn't even pick up the phone. I said okay. I agreed. Because that's what I did. I made myself small so everyone around me could feel big. But something was already shifting in my chest. Something cold and awake and completely done with being reasonable. 2 days later, I came home early and found them in my living room going through their story together. I told myself I was going to confront them, that seeing them together would finally make me loud and honest. Instead, I sat in the chair by the window and said, I can give you feedback. Tell me what you've got. They barely registered my presence. When they asked how we met, Brandon said, leaning toward Jade, I'll say I spotted you at a rooftop bar in Austin during spring break senior year. You were with your friends. I sent over a drink. My stomach dropped out of my body. That was our story. Exactly how Brandon and I met. Me on a rooftop in Austin. Him sending over a drink with a note that said you look like someone worth talking to. I'd kept that napkin for 3 years. It was still in a box in our closet. That's how you and I met, I said. That's our actual story. Brandon shrugged. I know it by heart. That's the point. Jade examined her cuticles. It's not like you own a meat cute, Mara. Something cracked open in me. Not loudly. Just a small, clean break. I went upstairs. Washed my face. Told myself I was overreacting, the way I always did. I was halfway down the staircase when I heard Jade's laugh. Not her normal laugh. Something softer. Private. I stopped on the landing. Brandon had his hand on her jaw, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. Her eyes were half closed and she was leaning into his touch like she'd done it 1,000 times. I must have made a sound because they flew apart. It's not what it looks like, Brandon said. We were just practicing, Jade said. For if anyone asks about affection. I looked at both of them. Right, I said. Rehearsal. I sat back down and said nothing, because I needed them to think I'd bought it. I needed time before I burned everything down. 4 days later, I was getting ready for work when I heard Brandon's voice drifting up from the backyard. I moved to the window. "I know I scared you," he was saying, pacing by the fence, voice low. "But Jade, please. The reunion is 10 days away and I need you there." A pause. "Because you're the only one who gets me. Because I love you." I was just afraid to say it in front of her. He loved her. He had never said those words to me in 5 years of marriage without me saying them first. "Friday night," he continued. "Pick you up at 7. Wear the blue wrap dress. After the reunion, everything changes. I promise." He hung up. I stepped back from the window. My hands weren't shaking. I noticed that. Something steadier had taken over. I picked up my phone and texted Brandon's older brother, Caleb. "Hi, Caleb. This is Mara. I know this is out of nowhere, but I need a favor. A big one. Please don't tell Brandon I reached out." A minute passed. Then, "Is everything okay?" I typed back, "No. That's why I need your help. 3 dots. Then, tell me where to meet you." Caleb was already at the coffee shop in Tampa when I arrived. He stood when he saw me, something Brandon had stopped doing years ago. He listened to every word without interrupting. When I finished, he didn't call me dramatic. He didn't make excuses for his brother. He just said, "What do you need?" Caleb was everything Brandon secretly hated himself for not being. He'd built a construction company from the ground up by 27, owned his house in Paradise Valley outright. He'd offered Brandon a project manager role 3 times. Brandon turned it down each time, saying he couldn't work for his older brother. The truth was simpler. Caleb made Brandon feel like a failure just by existing. "I want Brandon to feel what I've been feeling," I said. "Paranoid, jealous, desperate for answers he can't get." Caleb looked at me for a long moment. Then, quietly, "I've been watching him treat you this way for years. I'm in. Whatever you need." He covered my hand with his across the table. "For the record, he never deserved you." Something in my chest broke open in a completely different way. The next morning I was applying mascara when Brandon appeared in the doorway, clocking my blouse, my earrings, the effort he hadn't seen from me in years. "Where are you going?" "Coffee with Caleb." The color drained from his face in real time. "Cancel it." "No." He grabbed my phone off the counter. "Then I'll cancel it for you." I looked at this man I'd given 5 years to. This man who still asked for my coffee order every single time. Vanilla latte, extra shot, oat milk. Like the information wouldn't stick. Something Caleb had memoized on his own years ago without being asked. "Keep the phone," I said, picking up my keys. "I'll get a new one." And I walked out. I spent the afternoon getting ready in a way I hadn't in years. Red nails, black dress cut just right. A professional blowout. When Caleb knocked at 7, he looked at me the way a man looks at something he's been waiting for without knowing it. "You look incredible," he said. "I know." I grabbed my clutch. "Let's go crash a reunion." The hotel ballroom in downtown Scottsdale was everything Brandon had wanted. Chandeliers, valet, champagne on silver trays. I spotted them before they spotted me. Brandon in the blazer I'd bought him for our 3rd anniversary. Jade in the blue wrap dress he'd picked out, her hand on his arm, laughing on cue. Then Brandon looked up. His face went through 5 emotions in 2 seconds. Confusion, recognition, horror, panic, and then something that looked a lot like dread when he saw who was standing beside me. "Mara." His voice cracked. "Hey, sweetheart." I smiled wide enough for the whole room. Surprised. The crowd went quiet. People turned. One of his friends, big guy, easy smile, completely unprepared for what was coming, stepped forward. "Wait, I thought Jade was your wife." "Jade is my best friend," I said pleasantly. "I'm his wife. Mara. We've been married 5 years. The house he lives in, the car he drives, the suit he's wearing tonight, all mine. I've been funding this whole story from the beginning." The gasps moved through the crowd like fire through dry grass. Brandon grabbed my arm. "Mara, stop. You're embarrassing yourself." "No." I pulled free. "I'm embarrassing you." "Different thing." I held up my phone. Wedding photos. Me in white. Brandon and me at the altar. Jade behind us, maid of honor, holding my bouquet. "That's Jade," I said. "My maid of honor." The The woman who's been introduced as his wife tonight. The woman I've been financially supporting for 2 years while she was spending her free time in my house with my husband. I looked at her directly. How does it feel to finally get everything you wanted and watch it blow up in your face? Jade's mouth opened. Brandon said nothing. He just stood there, holding 5 years of carefully constructed lies, and for the first time in our entire marriage, he had absolutely nothing to say. I reached into my clutch and produced the envelope. One last thing. I handed it to him. 30 days to respond. He tore it open. Read the first line. His face went gray. Divorce papers. Caleb took my hand and we walked toward the exit. The crowd parted. Nobody stopped us. Nobody defended Brandon. They just watched his world come apart at the seams. At the door, I stopped and looked back one final time. The house is in my name, I said, loud enough for the room to hear. So is the car. So is everything. You have until the end of the month. Brandon moved out 4 weeks later. I watched from the bedroom window as he loaded boxes into a rental truck. Not his car, because that was in my name. No friends helping him, because most of them had stopped answering his calls after the reunion. Jade called twice, left voicemails, asked if I could keep her car note paid while she figured things out. I deleted them before they finished. 6 months later, I heard through a cousin that she and Brandon had tried to make it work in a studio apartment in Mesa. It lasted 11 weeks. The dream life they'd rehearsed in my living room turned out to require my income to function. Without it, it was just 2 people screaming at each other about groceries and whose turn it was to pay the electric bill. They didn't make it to their lease renewal. Caleb and I took things slow. Dinners, weekends, then a trip to Charleston I'd wanted to take for years. The Battery at sunset, good food, long conversations, not one mention of Brandon. 6 months after the reunion, Caleb asked me to move in. I didn't hesitate, because for the first time in longer than I could remember, I was choosing someone who had already chosen me. Not the house, not the security, not the version of me who absorbed every blow and called it love. Me, just me. And that, for once, was more than enough. If you've ever been the person holding everyone else up while they quietly help themselves to your life, this one's for you. Don't forget to subscribe to Reddit Family Secrets. Drop your story in the comments. I read every single one.